Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you an epic historical adventure film, Apocalypto. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In the Mesoamerican rainforest, where the Mayan civilization is evolving from barbarism, an unnamed primitive tribe led by Jaguar's father are preying on the wild animals. They know well to chase and kill their targets, with traps set up in advance. While celebrating a good harvest day there, they encounter a procession of refugees, who explains that the warfare ravaged their lands, and they have to flee elsewhere for a new beginning. With some fish offered as a present, the group's leader asks for permission to pass through the jungle, which is dominated by the current primitive tribe. Seeing that the visitors were in fear and despair of some unknown powerful enemies, the father gives his permission, but urges his son Jaguar never to allow fear to infect him. Later that night, the tribe gather around an elder, who shares his opinions that people with endless desires and greediness, despite having all the gifts of the world offered to him, will continue blindly taking, until there's nothing left in the world for him to take. The following early morning, Jaguar wakes up from a nightmare, where the fleeing group's leader, with his bloody heart in hand, suffers great pain, and urges him to run right away. Believing that it's a bad sign to him, he turns to worry that something terrible may happen to the small village, which is actually approached and besieged by another Mayan tribe, led by the leader Zero Wolf. Zero Wolf launches a sudden attack on the village right then, and sets the huts on fire. Many villagers get caught and killed before they could make any effective resistance. During the chaos, Jaguar lowers his pregnant wife and their young son into a pit for shelter. While returning to the battle in rage, Jaguar fights hard against the powerful enemies, saves his father from the sadistic raider Middle Eye, and nearly kills him. But unfortunately, he's then captured up. Since it's not allowed to kill the captured strong adults, to be used as their sacrifices to God, the enraged Middle Eye turns to kill the old father before Jaguar, as a return for the humiliation suffered from him. The surviving adults in the village are tied up together, and taken on a long forced march through the jungle, leaving the children behind to fend for themselves, in fear and despair. While Jaguar's wife and son remain trapped in the deep pit, undiscovered to the raiders. On the journey, Jaguar happens to see the previous fleeing group, who is also captured up later by the raiders. In following days, the captives are forced to cross the deep river, and climb over steep cliffs, while suffering brutal torture from the raiders, with some losing their lives. On their way to the Mayan city of the raiders' origin, they march through the raised forests and vast fields of failed crops, due to the drought, alongside villages decimated by an unknown disease. They then pass a little girl infected with a horrible plague, and try to push her away, who however, seems to be possessed suddenly with some evil spirit, and begins to prophesize the end of the Mayan world, by the time the daylight is covered, and a man possessed by the panther, revives from the dirt. The captives are later brought to the Mayan city, where numerous slave laborers are struggling through a harsh and hazardous condition, to build massive pyramid-like temples, that are used to execute those male captives as sacrifices to God. While the females are brought to the crowded market, and sold into slavery. It's revealed that the Mayan community has been suffering from the drought and plague, for a pretty long time with unknown causes. They then resort to Almighty God and pray for its forgiveness, by executing the captives as sacrifices. Those chosen to be the sacrifice, are painted blue on their bodies, before being escorted to the top of the pyramid, where the priest performs the sacrificial ceremony to appease God. During the process, the priest cuts open a captive's body, takes the bloody heart out, and shows it to the cheering civilians below. After that, he chops down the captive's head, and throws the body pieces down the steps. As Jaguar is laid out on the altar, a solar eclipse happens right at that time, and the daylight is soon covered up, making people below become more fanatical towards the sacrifice ceremony, which however, is stopped by the priest, for he believes that the gods are satisfied with the blood. Thanks to that, the rest of the captives are spared their lives temporarily, but later taken to the range, as target practice for the Mayan soldiers. Some captives are shot dead right away, before they can run any further. Jaguar manages to survive the arrow rain, and runs almost to the edge of the range, before he's shot down, and badly injured. To everyone's surprise, he then tricks to kill a careless soldier, Zero Wolf's son, before escaping away from the range. In sorrow for the death of his son, Zero Wolf bursts into anger and orders his men to chase after Jaguar. While running out of the cornfields, Jaguar is soon horrified by numerous dead bodies abandoned in a swampland, which shows the brutality of such a Mayan tribe. Because of that, he knows he has to overcome his fear in order to survive the hunting from the pursuers behind. Back into the jungle, Jaguar climbs up a tree for shelter, but is confronted by a panther, who runs after him tightly, but later kills a chasing raider instead. Although the fellow raiders take the panther's attack as a bad omen to their community, especially when considering the prophecies made by the little girl previously, Zero Wolf orders them to keep searching the jungle for the escaping Jaguar. But Jaguar still runs at large, for he seems to be more adaptable to the jungle life. The next early morning, the raiders lose another member due to the snake attack. They keep chasing and later corner Jaguar to a dead end near a cliff, where the water falls into the deep bottom. In fear though, Jaguar takes the courage to plunge towards the bottom, and survive the water impact luckily. He then challenges Zero Wolf and the raiders for their barbaric invasions, and claims that this territory should be dominated by his tribe. Humiliated by the challenge, Zero Wolf kills one of his men, who proposes to bypass the waterfall, and demands the rest to jump down from the high immediately, resulting in another member's death. Later, Jaguar gets stuck in a muddy swamp, but he struggles to overcome his fear, and finally free himself out. In the subsequent hunt and runs, he fights the raiders back with a beehive, and kills one of them with a self-made poisonous arrow. During his confrontation with Mil, who killed his father, Jaguar is driven by the rage, and runs towards the guy. He then gives Mil a deadly strike in his head, killing him immediately. However, the drought breaks unexpectedly, and heavy rain begins to fall, threatening to drown his wife and son, who are still trapped in the deep pit, despite their attempt to escape. What's worse, the wife gives birth to another son, who's born under the surface of the dangerously rising water. However, Jaguar is still busy with his escape, giving him no opportunity to rescue his family. Later, despite his being shot down by the approaching Zero Wolf, Jaguar stands up to confront him under the great pain. Surprisingly, Zero Wolf comes to give Jaguar a final shot. He happens to trigger a trap set on the ground, which kills him immediately. The remaining two raiders chase the exhausted Jaguar all the way to the beach, where however, the two stop their attack, upon catching sight of the Spanish ships, anchored off the coast and making their way ashore. While the two raiders start walking towards the giant ships out of curiosity, Jaguar flees back to the pit at his last strength, and saves them out before it's too late. Soon after that, Jaguar and his family return to the jungle with his tribe, hoping to restart their peaceful life as before. However, while looking out over the strangers of higher-level civilization, landing on the territory in the far distance, they seem to show some strange worries about their future. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.